Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we've got a comparison between two zero tolerance knives, both of which I like, both of which I have reviewed very positively. And this video actually comes out of a discussion on Canadian Knife and Gear, which is a Facebook group I've mentioned before. It's about my favorite sort of sub community of the knife community these days. The admins do a fantastic job. They just keep it really on point and really friendly and really fun and fairly relaxed. So it's just a really good place. And I find myself most of the time, if I'm in various conversations about knives, that's where I'll be rather than say Blade Forums or various other options, USN or something like that. Anyway, wanted to give those guys a shout out because there was a whole discussion about these two knives that sort of initially got me thinking about this video. And then at Ontario Knives, friend of mine, Bradley, who lives locally to me, said, "Hey, Kevin," we were chatting, and he's like, "Hey, that whole conversation on Canadian Knife and Gear, I've got, remember, I have a 0640, so why don't I lend it to you for a few days and you can do a comparison video." So thanks, Bradley. Thanks, Canadian Knife and Gear, for sort of being the source or the inspiration behind this video. I am going to put these two side by side, and let me say from the start that I'm definitely a little on the fence here. I actually really enjoy both of these knives an awful lot. They both have a lot to recommend them. There are a couple little things that I wish were different on both. And so it really is kind of a toss-up in terms of which one I would solidly recommend, but let's go ahead and work our way through here. At the very least, I think I should be able to give you enough information to make your own decision, and I'll probably be able to come up with, if someone held a gun to my head and said I could only keep one of these knives, I'll kind of come up with that at the end as well. All right, so let's start off with size and weight. You can see they're fairly similar. By the way, I should say the background of these knives. This is of course based on the Hinderer XM18, and this is based on the Emerson Viper. So two different lineages from two very well-known makers, both brought to production by Zero Tolerance. So let's start off with the 0562 Ti, 8¼ inches overall, 3 5/8 on the blade. Now that's not measuring from this little horn. If you measure from there, it does take it down closer to 3.5 inches, 4 15/16 on the handle. So almost okay, every bit of 5 inches. For grip area here, we've got 3 7/8, so almost 4 inches of grip area, and this hefty little guy weighs in at 5.4 ounces. So not lightweight, but certainly not crazy heavy either. Moving over to the 0640, the Emerson design, we have 8.5 inches overall, so a bit of extra length there. 3 3/4 inches on the blade, so you definitely get that extra length in the blade and in the cutting edge. 4 3/4 on the handle, so you've definitely got a smaller overall length on the handle despite a longer knife, so the blade to handle ratio is pretty impressive here. 4 7/8 in terms of grip area. So you can actually see, if I put these side by side, your hand sort of needs to fit into here on this guy, but here you've got all this space. So it does do a little better in terms of the grip area, if that's a concern for you, if you have really big hands or something like that. And the weight on this is a very impressive 4.4 ounces. So considering that weight and as slim and as lean as this knife is, it's pretty obvious that this one's going to carry much better and yet deliver virtually just as much utility. Now, there's definitely a discussion to have about these blades. That's where we want to go next. But in terms of size, weight, and how easy it is to carry for how much sort of utility you have, the 0640 is pretty clearly the winner. Let's move on to the blades. Both of these have 20 CV. Both of them have satin and stonewash. One, of course, is a clip point. One is a drop point. In terms of grind, we have the Hinderer slicer grind, which is an interesting grind. You can see out here, it's going to be much thinner and slicier. Down here, it's going to be thicker and tougher. And that's that is what it is. It's maybe not exactly the philosophy that I would want to use, but in fact, from a utility standpoint, when I'm cutting with this knife, it's barely noticeable. Okay, moving over to the Emerson, it's more of a saber style grind. I guess maybe it's not exactly a saber grind, but very close. Moderately high, okay. Certainly you can see just the distance here is going to be considerably different, and therefore this one is going to theoretically slice better. Now in use, okay, the difference is fairly minimal. All right, you're not going to, if you put a blindfold on and started cutting with these, you wouldn't immediately say, "Oh, this one cuts so much better. I can't even believe it." It's not that kind of a difference, okay? It's just a minor difference. Of course, stylistically, they're quite a bit different as well, and that's going to be more subjective. But in terms, I guess the one other difference here is you do get a little more cutting edge with the 0640. Now, because these are so close, and because the differences are largely subjective, I feel like I've got to be honest, call the blades a tie. From my own standpoint, I feel that way. I like both of these blades, and I don't feel like I like one way, way better than the other. And from a use standpoint, where you go and cut some stuff, again, they're very, very close. Both of these are fairly thick blades. They're not really going to be the best. They're not going to function like a kitchen knife or something like that. Although, again, I don't feel like EDC knives need to do that. But because of all of those points, I really can't say that one is a clear, definitive winner. Okay, moving on to the action. This one will be a little easier to deal with. We've got, of course, the flipper, titanium frame lock on bearings with the ZT. All stuff we're pretty familiar with. Here we have sort of a liner-ish lock, thumb disc, and washers. And I have to say, the action on this is spectacular. Very, very smooth, very enjoyable. And because it's got the thumb disc, and I know some people don't like thumb discs. I have no idea why. Maybe they just don't like the look of them. Anyway, doesn't matter. In terms of action, I will say, let's start with the similarities. Both of these have great action. Both of them are smooth. Both of them are fast. Both of them are fidgety. So very, very easy to get at that lock bar. Very easy to get your thumb on that thumb plate. Very easy to flip. Both fast, both fidgety, both enjoyable. So they've done a great job on the action on both of these. However, there's one clear point of distinction, and probably you guys know what I'm going to say here. This one being on washers and achieving that action, I think deserves more credit, and so I'm going to call it the winner, because the actions are virtually the same, and yet one does it with washers and one needs bearings to do the same thing. That's ball bearings, okay? So for that reason, while they're both highly enjoyable, I'm going to call the 0640 the winner. Moving on to handle design, construction, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we've got a full titanium frame lock here, standoff construction, deep carry clip, fairly typical stuff that we're used to seeing in sort of modern folding, high-end modern folders. Here we have something a little bit different. It's sort of an overlay construction with this green carbon fiber. I get they were going for the Viper tie-in. I wish they would have done anything else, but my favorite, there are lots of aftermarket scales. My favorite is absolutely the micarta. Now, that said, this is not, I don't think the green ruins the knife the way some people felt. The clip was a bigger issue. Now, this clip has been ever so slightly modified. All they did was they used a clamp, bent this up, bent this back a little bit down, okay, just like a desk vise or something like that, and modified those angles just a little bit. And now this clip works perfectly. And I do think that's pretty easy for anyone to do themselves. However, it's a little frustrating that we have to. I feel like ZT should be able to figure that out from factory, okay? But they didn't. So anyway, that's you gotta lose some points for that. The other thing is, in hand, the feel of these two knives. This is comfortable. It's fine, but it's not amazing. This, however, really is fantastic. It just molds to your hand. And so in terms of handle design and construction, the 0562 Ti or the other variants of the 0562 definitely win, okay, fairly handily. Now, having said all that, again, I think both of these are good knives. I'm not really complaining about one in particular. As I said, they're both comfortable, and the trade-off is, well, you get a little nicer feel in hand, you get something a lot smaller and easier to carry. So the last point that we should consider is the price point. These you can pick up for a little over $200. I think the retail, I mean the map price is like 240 bucks. Map on this is like 280, maybe more. Yeah, 280. Let's go with that. If I'm wrong, correct me down in the comments. So there is a difference in price that also needs to be considered because this really is a great knife. Now, I will say this, if you could get aftermarket scales for that $40 extra, I would be more inclined to recommend this knife, but aftermarket scales are going to cost you about $100, which puts this up to a $340 knife. That at that point, I don't think the value makes sense, which is why I haven't switched the scales out on this, and why the current owner hasn't switched them out either, at least to my knowledge. I do know he loves the knife and carries it all the time, and actually I think he kind of likes the green, so there'd be no reason for him to do that. Okay, so if you held a gun to my head and said you must pick one of these knives and you have to, get rid of the other one and you can't buy it back or anything like that, which one are you going to pick? Honestly, I would probably pick, not honestly, but I would definitely pick the 0562. Having said that, I love the 0640. I think it does some things really, really well. I love the look of it. I love the blade shape. I love the action on this knife. It is phenomenal, so impressive that just that action alone makes it so enjoyable. Well, this one is about what you'd expect. Frankly, anyone from, there are, yeah, a knife with good action on bearings is not that impressive. Like you can get that for $50 from Bestech. So I'm a little more impressed by the action on the 0640 and get some certain amount of joy from that. Overall, though, I would say I'd still end up going with the Hinderer design, and I'm a bit of a Hinderer fanboy, more so, definitely much more so than an Emerson fan, so that may influence my pick as well. I'd love to know which you would pick down below. I know that wasn't as definitive as perhaps you'd like. Again, overall, I would pick this one, but it would be really, really tough to make that call. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to use those links down below. That does help the channel, and it helps you as well, as you get a bit of a discount code there. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.